There's a moment that rewires everything. You're sitting across from someone at dinner, maybe a friend, maybe a partner. They're laughing about something trivial from their childhood, a scraped knee, a forgotten permission slip, the time their mom packed the wrong lunch. And you're smiling, nodding, but inside, something cold settles in your chest, because your version of childhood, it didn't include permission to be small. You weren't allowed scraped knees. You were the one cleaning wounds, managing moods, translating adult chaos into something a child's mind could survive. And nobody, not one person, ever stopped to ask what that cost you. If you recognize that feeling, the one where everyone else's childhood sounds like a foreign language, stay with me. Because what I'm about to break down isn't just psychology, it's the architecture of your entire nervous system. And understanding it might be the first step towards stopping the patterns that saved you once, but are suffocating you now. Let's establish something critical right now. You weren't mature for your age. You were traumatized into performance. There's a difference. One is a compliment. The other is a confession that the adults around you failed so spectacularly that a child had to become the structural support of an entire household. And the truly devastating part, you probably got praised for it. Such a good kid. So responsible. So easy. What they meant was so convenient. So quiet. So willing to disappear. Today we're dismantling the psychology of adults who were parentified as children, the ones who learned to scan rooms before speaking, who still flinch at raised voices, who apologize for needing anything. We're exploring the neuroscience behind why rest feels dangerous, why compliments feel like traps, and why you've spent your entire adult life waiting for permission to finally fall apart. Because here's what most people don't understand. This isn't about being responsible or independent. It's about a nervous system that was conditioned to believe survival depends on your ability to keep everyone else stable. When a child is forced into emotional caretaking before their prefrontal cortex is even close to developed, something called role reversal happens at a neurological level. Psychologists have a term for this, parentification. But that clinical word doesn't capture what's actually occurring in the brain. Your amygdala, the part responsible for threat detection, goes into permanent overdrive. You develop what researchers call hypervigilance, an exhausting state where your nervous system is constantly scanning for danger, instability, emotional shifts in the people around you. Think of it like this. Most people's brains have a smoke detector that activates when there's actual fire. Yours, it's a military-grade radar system that detects temperature changes 3 rooms away. You're not paranoid, you're neurologically calibrated for survival in an environment where safety was never guaranteed. And here's the devastating part. That system doesn't turn off just because you left that environment. Your body still thinks love is a transaction, that rest is a luxury you haven't earned, that your needs are inconvenient interruptions to everyone else's comfort. But there's something even more insidious happening beneath the surface. Children in these situations don't just adapt behaviorally, they adapt biologically. Studies on adverse childhood experiences show that chronic stress during developmental years literally alters gene expression. Your cortisol levels, the stress hormone, remain elevated long into adulthood. You essentially live in a state of low-grade crisis, even when sitting in a peaceful room, even when nothing is objectively wrong. This is why stillness feels wrong. Why vacations make you anxious. Why you need a project, a problem, a crisis to manage just to feel like yourself. Your nervous system was trained that calm equals complacency, and complacency equals catastrophe. So you stay busy, you stay useful, you stay vigilant, because the moment you stop performing, that terrifying question resurfaces. If I'm not fixing something, who am I? And here's where it gets psychologically complex. You didn't just lose a childhood, you lost access to your own emotional needs. When a 6-year-old is managing a parent's addiction, mediating their arguments, or becoming the household therapist, that child learns a devastating lesson. My feelings are dangerous. Expressing sadness means I'm weak. Expressing anger means I'm difficult. Expressing fear means I'm a burden. So you stop expressing, you stop feeling, or at least, you stop admitting you're feeling. Fast forward 20 years. You're an adult now, supposedly free. But when someone asks how you're doing, you still say fine. When you're overwhelmed, you still smile. When you're drowning, you still extend a hand to pull someone else to shore. Because vulnerability wasn't modeled as safe. It was modeled as weakness that gets punished. And no amount of logic can override what your body learned when your brain was still forming. Let's talk about what happens in relationships. Because this is where the survival patterns reveal themselves most brutally. People with secure childhoods enter partnerships expecting reciprocity. They believe love means mutual support, shared burdens, balanced effort. You enter relationships like a contractor entering a construction site. You scan for what's broken. You assess what needs fixing. You calculate how much of yourself you'll need to sacrifice to keep this thing standing. And when your partner offers help, when they notice you're struggling and extend genuine care, something strange happens. You feel uncomfortable, suspicious even. Because in your experience, care always came with conditions. Help meant debt. Softness meant someone was about to ask for something you couldn't give. So you push it away. You insist you're fine. You become hyper-independent, not because you don't want connection, but because depending on anyone feels like handing them a weapon they'll eventually use against you. Research from the American Psychological Association reveals that approximately 1 in 5 adults experience some form of parentification during childhood. That's 20% of the population walking around with this invisible architecture of survival. You're not alone in this. You're not uniquely broken. You're part of a massive, largely silent group of people who learn to prioritize everyone else's stability over their own developmental needs. But here's what makes it so isolating. Parentified children often become exceptionally high-functioning adults. You're the reliable friend, the successful professional, the one everyone turns to in crisis. From the outside, you look like you have it all together. And that's precisely the problem. Your competence is a costume. Your strength is a survival mechanism. And beneath all that capability is a child still waiting for someone to notice they're not okay. Ever noticed how you can't accept compliments without immediately deflecting? Someone says you did something well, and you instantly minimize it, redirect to someone else's contribution, or make a self-deprecating joke. That's not modesty. That's a nervous system that learned positive attention is temporary and will be revoked the moment you stop performing. Praise feels dangerous because it raises the bar. It means next time, you'll have to be even better, even more useful, even more indispensable just to maintain basic acceptance. Or consider this. You probably struggle with rest in a way that confuses people around you. They tell you to relax, take a break, do nothing for a day. And it sounds simple, right? Except when you try, your chest tightens, your mind races, you feel guilty, lazy, like you're wasting time that should be spent being productive. Because rest wasn't modeled as a human right. It was modeled as something you earn through exhaustion, and even then, it feels precarious, like permission that could be revoked at any moment. Now, let's address the shadow side of this, because not all outcomes are functional. Some parentified children don't become hyper-independent. They become completely avoidant. They shut down so thoroughly that intimacy feels impossible. They isolate not because they prefer solitude, but because letting anyone close means risking the kind of pain that nearly destroyed them once. For them, the pattern isn't overfunctioning. It's complete emotional withdrawal. And here's the question you need to ask yourself honestly. Are you choosing independence, or are you running from dependence because dependence once meant danger? There's a profound difference. Healthy autonomy feels empowering. Trauma-based independence feels like armor you can't remove even when you want to. One is freedom. The other is a prison you've mistaken for safety. If you find yourself unable to ask for help even when you desperately need it, if you panic when someone tries to take care of you, if you've convinced yourself that needing people is weakness, you're not operating from strength. You're operating from unhealed survival patterns. And until you recognize that distinction, you'll keep choosing isolation and calling it independence. But here's what's important to understand. That child version of you, the one who stepped up when no one else would, who managed chaos that would break most adults, who learned to read emotional temperature like a life or death skill, that child was brilliant, adaptive, remarkably intelligent. You didn't choose parentification because you were weak. You chose it because your brain calculated that being indispensable was safer than being a burden. Evolutionary psychologists call this attachment-based survival strategy. When a child's environment is unstable, they will sacrifice authenticity for connection, personal needs for proximity, their own development for the illusion of control. It's not pathological, it's adaptive brilliance. Your nervous system did exactly what it needed to do to keep you alive. The tragedy isn't that you developed these patterns. The tragedy is that nobody intervened soon enough to tell you that you didn't have to. And let's be devastatingly honest about something society refuses to acknowledge. The world loves parentified children. Teachers love them because they're easy. Bosses love them because they never complain. Partners love them because they don't make demands. The entire system benefits from your conditioning. So when you start setting boundaries, when you start saying no, when you start prioritizing your own needs, people get uncomfortable. Suddenly you're difficult, you're changing. You're not the person they knew. And what they mean is, you're not the person who made their life easier at the expense of your own well-being. Healing from parentification isn't just personal work, it's social rebellion. Because every boundary you set challenges a system that taught you your worth was measured by your usefulness. So what does healing actually look like? It's not about fixing yourself because you were never broken. It's about recognizing that the strategies that saved you at 7 are sabotaging you at 30. It's about learning that rest isn't laziness, that needing support isn't weakness, that your value doesn't depend on how much you can carry for other people. Start by asking your inner child a simple question. What did I need back then that I never received? Maybe it was permission to cry without being told to be strong. Maybe it was someone asking how you were doing without needing something in return. Maybe it was just being allowed to be small, scared, imperfect. And then slowly, painstakingly, start giving those things to yourself now. Not to erase the past, but to stop recreating it. This is shadow work in its truest form. Not bypassing pain with affirmations, not spiritually bypassing trauma with gratitude, but turning toward the parts of yourself that you abandoned to survive and saying, I see you, I hear you, and I'm not leaving anymore. That's the reparenting process. And it's brutal because it means feeling the grief you never had permission to feel, sitting with the rage you were taught to suppress, acknowledging the needs you were conditioned to ignore. You weren't supposed to raise yourself. You weren't supposed to manage adult emotions with a child's nervous system. You weren't supposed to earn love through labor. And the fact that you survived it, that you're here reading this, trying to understand what happened so you can finally stop repeating it, that's not just resilience, that's revolutionary. You're not broken, you're not too much, you're not damaged, beyond repair. You're someone who learned to survive in conditions that should never have been imposed on a child. And now, finally, you get to learn something new. You get to learn that safety doesn't require hypervigilance, that love doesn't require performance, that rest is a human right, not a reward for exhaustion. You're not someone who grew up too fast. You're someone who was forced to become an adult before your brain was ready, and you survived it with a level of grace and competence that most people will never have to access. You're not running from connection. You're protecting yourself from repeating patterns that once felt like survival. You're not difficult. You're finally choosing yourself. Tell me, does this describe your experience? Have you spent your life being the reliable one, while quietly wondering when it's your turn to fall apart? Drop it in the comments. Let's find each other. Because maybe the most healing thing we can do is stop pretending we're fine and start admitting we're still learning how to rest. If this resonated with your journey, subscribe for more deep dives into the patterns that shape us. Relearning how to live for yourself takes time, but you don't have to do it in silence. Be kind to that inner child today. I'll see you very soon.